world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Stephanie.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren, and I'm here with Stephanie. We've had a couple people ask us recently what our process is for creating the podcast every week, because we've had a very successful run. We've been at this for over 2 years now, and consistently. And we've done podcasts about what it's changed in us and how we've evolved as people. And I think that there's a lot of lessons that I've learned, especially around leadership, doing this Soulful Leader Podcast with Stephanie. And much of that has to do with how we've chosen to do the podcast and what it means to be a soulful leader. The two of those are directly connected. So one of the things that I know I'd like to at least start with is our presencing practice. And what does that mean, a presencing practice? So instead of having an agenda for what we're going to talk about each week, what Stephanie and I both do in our own lives is we are present to reoccurring themes or things that we notice, or that we notice. And in your own lives, as you go through life, there are things that you notice. But most of us don't have a way to track that or even.
Okay. Let's even just talk about what you notice.
Okay.
And even what that means, because I think it really even starts with a question of like, what wants to happen? And we talk about, like, some of our podcasts, we talked about, like, instead of always having the answers, to really present asking better questions. And as a culture, we don't really learn how to ask good questions, or we're ashamed when we do start to ask questions. So what Maren and I are really talking about, like being present to what wants to happen or noticing what we notice, or starting with something of saying, I have a calling, or I feel or know or see that there's something that we want to help to be in service with. But we also have this conversation with, whether you call it spirit or God or higher power or your future self, whatever you might want to call it. But I would say, like, the highest possibility that I am meant to step into in this lifetime, I will present her and say, from my future, and I'd say, what wants to happen? Where are you guiding me? Help lead me into the most beautiful, extraordinary, meaningful, purposeful life. And then Maren and I start to pay attention, and
so
we might talk to that.
In addition to that, so there is the bigger personal level of what I'm meant to step into. There's also an agreement that you and I have about the Soulful Leader Podcast in particular, because we also have the Soulful Leader Project. So we have an agreement and an intention for what the podcast is and how we are showing up to serve future leaders, current leaders, people to shift the way that we lead, that leadership is thought about. So with both of those intentions, they come together, and from that place, now we start to become aware of what's showing up. So there does need to be intention first.
Absolutely. And Maren and I are doing this together. And this is no different than what you would do with a marriage, or what you would do with friends, or different things like this too. You'd be saying,
or
okay,
well,
what wants to happen? Or a business, or anywhere. It's an actual collaborative and presencing practice. So instead of trying to figure it all out, going, okay, this is our goals. These are our, our projections for this year. This is what we want to get done. This is where we want to go. And that's helpful, but you hold it lightly, meaning you might have that kind of an ideal of what you want to go, but you also are holding space for what wants to happen too. That doesn't mean you toss out the old goals and ideals. You have a conversation about it, going, well, hey, we kind of talked about how we want to change the way business does business. We don't always know what that means. So we know that it isn't the way that it's always been done. So then Maren and I would talk and say, well, what have you noticed this week? Or where has your attention gone? Or what has landed in your environment, whether feeling, seeing, hearing, or sometimes books light up, or you hear something on the radio, or somebody else is talking next to you and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, or you have an insight in an internal awareness, a dream, an ideal. And so it's not that we act on it immediately, we actually bring it to each other and we curate it, really, where we start collecting it. And when a whole bunch of things are lining up with that, then we go, oh, I think this is really the week that we need to talk about whatever might be lighting up that week.
So the other piece that I want to add to that, you mentioned it's like a partnership, right? A business partnership or a marriage or friendships. It's also, there's another entity which we don't talk about them, especially in marriages or businesses. And Stephen Covey mentioned it when he talked about masterminds, that whenever there's a group that comes together in order to create something, that group ends up as an entity of itself. It ends up as a being. And anyone who's had a business can feel that in their business. Like the business takes on a life of its own. It is an entity. So there's that piece of the intention process that we're aware of. It's also, we have consciously chosen to make spirit our partner. So it's Maren and Stephanie and our team and spirit and the being of the Soulful Leader Project and the being of the Soulful Leader podcast. And it may sound like it's getting crowded, and those are the pieces that they help us to, we get so many billions of bytes of information. We're in the information age and we're overloaded with information. So who is sorting that for us? My conscious mind can't do it. Stephanie's conscious mind can't do it. It's not what it was built for. So when we set our intentions and when we include the beings that are there to help us, spirit and the beings of our, of our business, those are the ones that are helping us to curate. I love that word that you used, because when we walk into a museum, they don't put every piece of art that they have up on the walls. Nobody would want to go see that. They curate and they tell a story. And that's what invites us in and makes us excited. When somebody is putting together a book, they curate the information. The people who write those books, they have so much information and they curate the specific things. And so that's what we do, and we get help every week. Here, this lights up. Here, that, do that. Think of this.
And I think for me, what happens is that my identity gets to take a back seat. So it's like, I think there's this part in our culture that we have to be in control. And when we're not in control, we don't have clarity and we don't know what wants to happen, there's a tendency to go into fight, flight, or freeze, those kind of reactive states. And when I am intentional about having a third party, being, you and I are doing the Soulful Leader Project, the Soulful Leader Project has the third identity, that's spirit. And I am practicing letting go. I'm practicing surrendering. I'm practicing allowing. I heard something said earlier today. It's like, when you feel you're overwhelmed and you just go, I can't do this, spirit can do it for you. And so what is your practice to allow it? That's kind of what we're telling. I can't, spirit can, trust and allow. That's the practice.
So I just so often I think we're taught if we don't do it, no one will. If you don't do it, no one will. You know,
Right.
that belief, that saying. And so if I don't make it happen, if I don't push through, if I don't, and I guess I agree with that if I
Well,
believe it,
sometimes that's true.
right?
Sometimes that's true. And sometimes it's not.
Right.
You know, it's like we've seen these before. It's like, sometimes something comes in for a season or a reason, right? And when you look at like, why did this happen to me? Whatever that is, like, you got fired or you went through a divorce or you had an illness or whatever. It's like there's a reason and there's a season. It's like, what if there was a third entity of like, we've said this before in our podcast, that it happens for us, not to us. Like if you presence a different place to go, I wonder this third being, this third entity, what beautiful unfolding that being or entity has for me. And it would be really helpful if I build a relationship with that being that's loving and kind, because I'm sure that being will then leave me breadcrumbs to remind me how to get home. Like they're not going to leave me lost in the wilderness. And I think that woundedness of like, if it's up to me if it's gonna happen. I'm like, I think that's really siloed energy and it really pushes people away. And then it sets yourself up for beating yourself up when you make a mistake or it doesn't work through and the way you hoped it would. And there is that you think of like a guitar string. It has to have the right amount of tension in it. So if it's too loose, it doesn't make sound. And if it's too tight, it breaks. And that's really what we're seeing. It's like, it's not about just giving up of like, this is what is meant to happen, but it's also not about trying to force your way through it too. It's holding that tension between the two. And so what is that? What is that practice that you have? And so I know many people have been asking us, like, how do you ever come up? You obviously have a lot to talk about. How do you ever come up with all those things? And that might be true. You're right. That might be true. I have a lot to talk about. I don't know. But I'm also paying attention. I also have a daily practice, and so does Maren, where we are paying attention. We're investing our awareness with the question, what wants to happen? And then Maren and I meet, a minimum of 3 to 4 times a week outside of the podcast of just talking and texting. And, Maren lives in Chicago. I live in Nova Scotia. And so it's not like you can go and have a cup of coffee with each other, but we do online. And we talk about this and say, what's showing up for you, and this is what's showing up for me, and I wonder what spirit wants to have us talk about this week.
I love that example of the guitar string because I think that's so perfect. We do tend to swing from one side to the other, and when you said earlier about having a practice of allowing, and it's in that tension of the opposites. It's not all right, I don't have to do anything, and if it's meant to be, it'll just drop into my lap, which sometimes actually happens.
Sometimes it does. But if you're not
And
having a practice of paying attention, you won't know that it's dropped into your lap.
true.
That's my key.
That is true.
How many
And
times
so
how many times has something really great shown up for you and you didn't know at the time that it was really great until it was gone? And then you're like,
right.
crap, you know?
Yeah.
Yet another reason to beat myself up about. But this is another reason why to have a practice so you don't beat yourself up so much. And you allow yourself to actually receive and be guided. And it's playful and fun.
And so often there is something that spirit is asking of me, saying, okay, if you want that here, I need you to do X, Y, or Z. And what I'm finding is through my practice, X, Y, and Z is not what my figuring mind would have told me that X, Y, and Z was. So, an example of for the podcast, normally, and this was true when we first got started, the woman that was helping us had us make lists of subjects that we could talk about. And to be honest, I don't think Stephanie and I ever once looked at that list, did we?
I was like, oh yeah, that list. I've totally forgot about that
Didn't you
list.
forget about that list, right?
I
And
did.
that's the
I
way
forgot
that
about it.
the figuring mind is like, okay, here's the process. We do it logically. Everything is logical, linear, inline. And because this is not a new practice, what we're sharing with you today is not a new practice for me or for Stephanie. Applying it to this podcast, when we started the podcast, obviously was new to the podcast. And so because it wasn't new to me or Stephanie, we were already in a flow of being in conversation with what wants to happen, with spirit, with like following the threads of life. And so our process was very different from what people would have told us, or what my figuring mind would have said, oh, this is what you need to do next, at because spirit had us going in a different direction, and it said, nope, this is what you guys need to do. Oh, okay. So it's fun. It's like
Yeah.
a treasure hunt.
Yeah. And I think, I'm thinking of parents out there that have young families who are trying to have their young families, their young people figure out what they're going to do once they graduate from high school. Like, what, and I remind the parents to say, we don't know what this soul is actually meant to unfold in their lifetime. And a lot of times, what they're meant to unfold hasn't even come into form yet. So to me, it's really helpful if someone who's 17 to 24 is learning how to practice what wants to happen and paying attention, and that has the space to try on different things. I think a lot of times we think, oh my gosh, I did this job, or I had that relationship, or I hurt myself here, and we get, we hurt ourselves, or we fail, quote unquote fail, right? And we judge ourselves that it's like, oh, I'm just a hot mess. I'm not figuring it out. I can't, I'm messing everything up. Instead of looking at it that perhaps you're building resonance of learning what it is your gifts and strengths are, what your passions are, and also discovering, every single one of those things that maybe didn't work out the way you had thought, was actually pruning you or guiding you towards some other gift or strength, or meeting a person or going to a different place that was going to be part of your future. And if we can trust that, and we can start to pay attention to it, that's the key. I think we willy-nilly, I used to think, I'm like, oh, I'm winging it. I'm just winging it. Or when I'm doing body work, I'm like, oh, I'm listening to the inner guidance. And it's like, oh yes, sometimes that's true. But I have to also show up and pay attention, and also involve the people or the things that I'm involved in and spirit, to actually have a conversation with, say, hey, are you feeling this? Or did you notice that? Or what about this? It's a conversation. It's not a right or wrong, or good or bad, or left or right, or up or down. It's like, okay, I'm going to note that. And I'm not taking an action on it until, I think, because that's our society tells us, oh, if you don't take an action, it'll be gone. You'll miss it. It's gone forever. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But until there's something that actually you can feel within your bones to go, okay, I've seen this enough. I need to act on it. Like, I had a situation recently where I kept getting messages to not do something, even though 99.9% of me was saying, yeah, I'm done. I need to go here. I need to go there. And this voice inside me kept saying, whoa, that's not what you think. Slow down. I'm like, okay, who the hell is talking to me? Like, what is this? Because it's such a small part, but I kept listening, and I'm like, okay, but there's something that felt so, so real, so true, that even though 99.9% of me was totally like, I'm like losing it, I listened to it. And as I started to listen to it, I started to see how this was unfolding in a completely different way than I would have never gone. And I want more of that.
So it's like we tend to react, and we don't,
Exactly.
we react from our egos and from our
Yeah.
identity. And when we have developed a a conversation with a deeper why, a deeper, with spirit, really, with whatever you want to call that, then we can presence that. We can, that voice, it may feel like, you know what, 99.9% of me says, no, I gotta go. I'm out of here.
I'm done.
And that
Right.
was the ego that was saying, no, I'm
Totally.
done. I need to protect myself.
And I was going to say, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because those are the two markers for me. If I'm in a place where I say, like, a rebellion, like, no, I am not doing this, absolutely no way, and there's like a lot of energy behind it, or the other is like, oh, why bother? I might as well just give up. I'm hopeless and I'm helpless and I have doubt. Then I know those two markers, coming back to that guitar string, I know I'm at two opposite ends and they're fighting against each other. It's going to be too tight, or it's not, or it's going to be too loose. And so when I know I'm listening to that, I don't want to, you can't meet me, or why bother? I'm a hot mess. It doesn't matter. I'm helpless and hopeless. Then I know I need to stop. And I go, okay, something, that's my ego. That is my ego that is afraid and it's trying to trick me. And that is when I say, I'm not going to do anything. I need to ask for help. I think earlier in one of the podcasts, I said, either I practice my surrender to spirit, because I say, either help me through this or take it from me. And I presencing and come in a way, give me the signs and the wonders and come in a way that I know it is coming from my ideal future self, the one that is leading the most beautiful, fruitful life, and come in a way that's kind and gentle. And if you presence and you practice that, and then you got to pay attention. You can't just like throw it out there and then duck and
Right.
hide. You actually need to find a way to record, or to take, so whether it's a notebook, whether it's recording on your phone or sticky notes, or whatever have you, but you got to find a way to actually record it, because one or two things doesn't mean that that's what you're supposed to do. And I think so many times I've said this to people. They're like, well, I'm not getting any answers. And I'm like, well, that's probably because you're in rebellion or resignation, right? You're hiding, or you're so fired up and attached to your ego that you're not letting any space come in to be guided.
We're also trying to grasp at them,
Mm-hmm.
And it really takes us back to kind of the beginning when we were talking about our process, because this is the noticing what you notice. And it's not a one and done. It's not oh, I saw an eagle, that means I'm supposed to, go and do that thing or whatever. It's okay, what does that I saw an eagle, what is it aligning with? What are the other things that I noticed that day or this week or this year? And, you mentioned having a process of either a journal or sticky notes or writing it down on your phone, or one of our processes is literally talking through stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I know when we talk through stuff, I have a notebook and I include stuff and it gets written down. And then I also have an evidence wall, just like like a Sherlock
Inspector
Holmes.
Clouseau.
Right, exactly. And so I bring my presence to that. And you do that the same thing. And so that is the difference between how we're choosing to do leadership and traditional leadership, which is my way or the highway type of thing, where we're listening
And
to
it's
the
timelines,
collaboration.
the
It is.
traditional leadership is like, well, you said you're going to get this done and it didn't get done. How come? What's happening? We're moving on this trajectory. And if you're either with us or against us, when it becomes an either or, that's an old way of leadership instead of a both and.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because now you're having a conversation. It's like, okay, this didn't get done. What happened? What, well, I got pulled over this way. And that could be your own inner distractions or not having a process, or even because spirit is guiding you towards something. And
And
if you
that's
can create the space to have the conversation.
right. So the space that this creates, the shift, when we're on those deadlines and those timelines, there isn't space for creativity, for innovation, for maybe this isn't the best way. It ends up all getting shoved down our throats, literally, and shoved down an assembly line of sorts. Whereas
But even hear the name that you just said, deadlines. It's dead. There's
it
no life.
is, there's no
There's no
life.
growth. There's no space. There's no energy.
Yeah.
It's
And
dead.
so when you
Deadline.
can open that up and include and collaborate and ask somebody, like you said, instead of saying, why didn't you hit this deadline? You can actually turn it around and saying, what is it that happened? Was what Get curious instead of judgmental, because there
Right.
may
And I
be
think
a key there.
sometimes if you find yourself somebody asking you, well, why didn't it get done, Maren? And you find yourself, Maren, saying, you're judging me, you're attacking me, and you become defensive. That's a really good indication. I know that happens for me, is like when I feel that way, I caught myself on that resignation and rebellion level, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I'm in a place where I'm not receptive and I'm not open, and I'm in a fight or flight, and I'm in an either or situation. So I have to do my own internal work, and yes, it takes work. One has to practice to be able to shift it. And I go, wait a minute, what if this is a conversation for a possibility? And if I can let go of my own inner judgment and my own inner critic self and allow that to be fluid and possible and loving and kind, then I can meet at a totally different place with this leader or with this colleague or with this partner or whomever I am in conversation with or in relationship with. Like I said, this isn't just for business. I think this is as parents. I think this is as as couples, as friendship, as even if there's no one in physical in your life, it's like still this is about co-creating your life with a very loving presence that is actually there to help and guide you. But most of us want to silo ourselves, and I got it. I got it. I'm going to do it all by myself. And I'm sure we're going to probably talk about asking for help here soon. So I think that might be our next podcast, and why it's
Well,
important and how to do it.
yeah. And it's what we were trained to do. From very young, we were trained, don't cheat off of that person, don't look at their paper, do it yourself. You have to learn how to do everything and do it well, which actually ends up in being just a mediocre version of everything instead of an exceptional, really the way we were meant to be is to have each of us be exceptional in our own gifts and strengths and then collaborate together. So I have a large soapbox I can stand on for that one. I have a question for you. So if somebody out there were inspired to look further into the co-creation aspect of leadership, of like, okay, it doesn't feel good when I am in this solo place. And I would like to explore more collaboration and feel that I do live in a friendly universe. What would what would you suggest that maybe is a first step for them at this point?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, all I can share is what I've been practicing myself. This is just one skill that I've been practicing. There's many, but
Yeah, that's great. Let's
often
start with
often the
one.
part, yeah, often the part that is reactive is a part that's very afraid and silos myself off. And often that part, I almost even imagine that part as being a childlike self. And so what I'll even do is like be present to that. Like I almost remove myself, like I'm not in it anymore, like I'm not actually feeling it. Actually remove myself and look outside and go, oh, what does Stephanie look like when she is in fear or when she's in reactivity? How does she
Mm,
hold her body? What is she thinking right now? And what is that creating in her environment? Is she getting close to this person or is she pushing them away? Is she narrow focused or is she broad focused? Like I'll actually pay attention. And if I'm still acting as that child, then I'll even kind of like go to myself and I'll say, hey, younger Stephanie or little Stephanie, what are you needing? I'm right here with you. You're not alone. I'm
mm,
right here. How can I help you? And then I take on the role of being the future evolved self that isn't attached to what's happening, that I'm just fully loving her and I'm fully there for her. I'm not trying to be in retaliation. I'm not trying to like run away or fight or any of that stuff. I'm fully present to her. And it's really interesting. I often will ask her, like the part that's afraid or scared, what do you need from me being the present self? And it's amazing what'll happen. Like sometimes she'll answer me, like sometimes she'll say, I just need you to like not push me so hard. Or I just want to have some time to play or relax. Or, sometimes she'll say something, but sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes she's just a hot mess and she just doesn't say anything. And so I'll just stay with her. I don't try to fix her. I don't try to change her. I just remind her I'm here with you. That helps me. It gives me some space in my own heart and in my presence. And I'm not being completely basically disembodied by that emotion. And it helps slow things down and allow me to be gentle and kind. And then I can choose a response, to be responsible rather than reactive.
Just, yeah, I love that. Creating the space, becoming the observer, even if you can just do it for a moment, it breaks the cycle. It breaks the
Totally.
cycle. And I think that that's, as leaders, there's an expectation put on us to have all the answers. And so often we are reactive and we don't even realize it. So having an ongoing practice of breaking that reactivity cycle to allow us to be responsive, to create the space for something different, to be an observer of like, oh, look at you go. Look at you go,
Right.
Maren. I don't think you wanted to say that out loud, did you, Maren? Wasn't there
But
something?
even from a loving place, it's like, oh, look at you go. Well, that was an interesting choice of words that you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Interesting. So,
Right.
how could I be even more loving?
Right.
What for myself, not
Yeah.
for the other person, but like what would be the most loving and kind for myself? Like if I
Mm.
slow down, and because often we see another person not as they are, but how we are. So if we're feeling like a scared 8-year-old, we're gonna see this employer or partner or instructor as someone who is like a really critical parent. And we're trying to like instead of saying actually this other person is just a human being, they're a lovely human being, like they have their own stuff too. But if I can go in and work with my 8-year-old and go, what are you needing right now, 8-year-old Stephanie? It's like, oh, I just need a break from it. I don't feel safe. Oh, okay. What would you need to feel safe? What do you need to hear from me? Or what do you need from me for you? Not against them, but for you. What is it that you're needing? Oh, I just need you to hold me and tell me you're gonna be okay. I got this. Yeah, you're gonna be okay. And so you build this internal relationship. And so what happens is that you're creating space and you're also evolving. And then maybe it isn't about the 8-year-old responding back to the other person. Maybe it's about my present self now stepping in and saying, I got this. You're okay. And I can ask instead of trying to project out onto them like you're this and you're that and da da da. I can then ask another question going, I heard you say this. Is that what you meant? Or was I just my 8-year-old self that was a little triggered? Probably was. Can you I heard you say, you never have time for, like I never have time. And is that what you mean? Or is it that you would actually like more time with me? Because if that's true, let's put some more time together because I don't need to react or retaliate or go into resignation or any of that stuff. I can save my energy and save this relationship and come to a new place. It takes practice, man. I'm telling you, I am so not perfect at this. But, let me tell you, I got lots of people who are helping me with practice with it. Let me tell you. And that's good. And I think that's a different way of looking at it. Instead of saying like I'm a hot mess, you can go, yeah, obviously I really do I want to evolve. I want to grow from this. So I want to keep practicing. I want to
Yeah.
get better.
I've started to embrace the messy middle. It's like, yep, that's I would actually much rather be in the messy middle than like, all right, I'm all done. I got it. Because when I'm all done and I got it, like that means I'm in a grave somewhere. So
Right.
I'm in the messy middle. Yep, absolutely. So great. Well, hopefully that answered some of your questions on our process. It probably brought up more questions about how that works. And if it did,
That's great.
I love
That's
that.
great.
That's our goal. I think that I think for both me and for Stephanie, if we get you thinking more in terms of questions than answers, we will have felt like we're a huge success. So hopefully it brought up lots of questions, and we're happy to explore those with you in our Facebook group or in our LinkedIn group. So join us there. You can also find us on YouTube, and you can get our free download from our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com. We'll see you all next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.